Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming along to our second session for January, where we have Tayob Ali talking to us about considerations for migrating SQL databases to Azure. On behalf of myself and Martin Catherall, as your hosts, we have got a number of sessions lined up for the upcoming months, so feel free to register for those, come along. So with that, I'll hand over to Tayob, who can take us through the next 60 minutes of his session on considerations for migrating SQL databases to Azure. All yours, Tayob.
You're on.
Can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks everyone. Warwick and Martin, thank you for hosting me, and great opportunity talking to folks in Australia mostly. I know people can join from all over the world because it's virtual. So I will get going. So this session, the demos that I have, only the demos can take more than an hour. So of course, I'm not going to hold you here. We'll finish it in an hour, but I'll share everything with Martin and Warwick later on. I will upload this in my GitHub repo because I made some changes, and you can download and you can test it by yourself. So if you run into any issues while you download my code, and if you want to play with some of this stuff, and if you run into any issues, you can always contact me. Don't worry about my certifications on the right side. I wanted to focus on my contact. Just take a note, and I'll share this at the end. You can anytime reach out to me, and I guarantee you that you will get an answer from me within a couple of days. So I'll try to go through the slides as quickly as possible. But since we are a small group, I also want to make sure that I entertain to your questions, comments. So please, put in the chat. If you cannot unmute yourself, probably you cannot the way it's set up. So put in the chat or raise your hand. I will stop and we can definitely get into a discussion, because my goal is not to rush through everything that I prepared. Is more of, talking to you based on, what you need, or, what's your concerns or questions. So before I start, this is a page, and, once you download my slide, it will actually have a URL, as you can see. This is a page that I want you to bookmark, right? If you have any interest into migrating your on-premises stuff to Azure, you are in the planning phase, you are in the halfway, you still have more to go, or you want to test, this is one page that I definitely want you to bookmark. This has all kind of scenarios divided into sections, whether you're migrating Oracle servers, or whether you're coming from DB2, whatnot, or SQL to SQL, SQL to Azure SQL, SQL to Azure VM, and all that. Plus, it has some case studies. So if you're working in a finance industry or healthcare, you can try to match one other companies like yours, and how they did it, what they learned, what are the bumps they ran into, and you can read those. So it's pretty interesting. So I definitely want you to mark that page, and that's why I put this slide at the beginning. The second one, so I'm not going to talk through all this because that's going to take a lot of time, but note this URL. This is a very old article by Microsoft, one of the Microsoft engineers, and I could not figure out if this person is still work there or not, because I wanted to put his name, but his or her name I could not find. But this is one of the article I again want you to read before you embark into this journey, because this really talks about how the resources are designed, or how the resources are architected behind the scene in Azure. Because as we'll talk about, right, a lot of stuff that happens in Azure that we're really not used to in on-premises, right? Like we don't just buy a server and the next day we say, can we get a bigger server, right, from HP or from Dell? We don't do that, right? We buy it once, we use it for years, and then we, if we didn't do our math right, we go to our boss, with a gloomy face and try to request for one, right? But in Azure, that doesn't happen. We can do it in instantaneously, pretty much. So how these things work, right? And then how Microsoft, give you these SLAs, right? And say, if you have some kind of setup, our SLAs, for data loss is only like 5 seconds, right? You can lose up to maximum 5 seconds. How does Microsoft does all this? So I really wanted to read this, and this is a slide that I just copied from here, and understand some of this, right? Behind the scene, how it works. So I'll just take like one example, right? Just this log generation rate maximum. I was really not paying attention to this log generation amount when I was on premises. Very seldom, right? I used to work for a healthcare company, very huge company, 2,500 clinics all over US. They had all the dialysis stuff. So we were like saving data from thousands of dialysis every 15 minutes or based on the anyway requirement. So sometime our log flushes will get behind and we'll run into some issues, but not in a day-to-day, like in all SQL servers. But when you go to Azure, right, this can become a big bottleneck for you. And there are new wait types actually Microsoft released in last couple of years just to monitor this. So unless you understand this, right, if you have you have huge workloads, you will really wouldn't know how to troubleshoot this, right? What should you do before you scale up? How do you know, if I'm generating this much of log, how do you go to the portal or to the Learn website and see what SKU you want to deploy? So this will be a good read and understand some of this. Microsoft used this log generation rate for many reasons, right? For the different SLAs, for RPO, RTO, whatever they promise. Plus, they also have internal replication, right? If you are in different tiers, they keep 3 copies of your data. So they have to make sure that all these things work. So if you're even if you're generating a lot of logs, they cannot do it, so they'll throttle you, right? And this is just an example. Like I said in the previous slide, there are other metrics that you want to understand, and then how Microsoft is controlling with their architecture behind the scene is good to understand. If you're just doing, 1 or 2 small servers just to test, probably you don't need. But if you're really handling, production workload, fast pace, a lot of, like high-end OLTP systems, you definitely need to understand this. Otherwise, you'll bump into issues. Now options. I'll talk about a lot of options because this is one of the things that I like, moving to cloud from on-premises, that the options that now I see that I did not had before, right? When I was restricted into the on-premises. So I'll talk about the options from different angle. And again, if I'm going too fast or too quick, and you're confused, or I was not clear, just stop me and we can go through this. So if you go to the portal today and just say I want to migrate to Azure SQL, right? So Azure SQL, the definition kind of is broadening, right? Every time. So today, under the umbrella of Azure SQL, all of these are member of Azure SQL. And I even didn't put hyperscale because hyperscale now really coming under Azure SQL database. And then so on December 15th, they just released a new price. So now if you go to the Azure SQL Blade, just for the PaaS model, you'll see that hyperscale is an option. So you can go through any of this. Now, if we want to talk about all of this, then it's going to take us a lot of time. So what I'm trying to make a point is, based on your workload, and I'll show you some of the tools that can help you to make these decisions, that you have all these options. So know the differences, know the pros and cons, know the price. If one thing I have to hammer, know your price, know how much you're going to spend, because you don't want to migrate and then when your boss or boss's boss come and tell you why we are spending more, why did we migrate, what is the benefit, right? Make sure you discuss all this beforehand and then understand the difference. And this is another slide that I copied this from here. As you can see on the left top corner, I did not take the credentials out because I did not create this slide. I copy pasted, so I want to make sure that I make that clear. You definitely want to sit down with your other partners. And when I say partners means, your other infrastructure folks, security, risk control, whatever name you have, your dev leads, and the business owners, right? Whoever owns that business unit that the database is supporting. And you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody understand that what are the controls you are willing to give up, because that is absolutely necessary. You don't want to have this discussion after you migrate, because some of the stuff you're going to give up, right? You don't have that control that today you have on premises. Like I can give you a quick, few examples. Today I can take a differential backup. I can take a transactional log backup exactly at the minute or second that I want. As soon as I move to Azure SQL database, or in most flavors other than going to VM, if I'm not giving up some of my backup control, I cannot control those. They will just say, guarantee that we'll take a full backup, with every 7 days. We can take a differential backup between 12 and 24 hours, you decide. And we'll take transactional log backups, in between to keep our SLAs or to meet our SLA. But you cannot control that. Are you okay to giving that up? Patchings, you don't control. Right, you get notices now. There are some new development in last 1 year. There are some patching windows that you can select and all that. So make sure you understand those and make sure you discuss with with your peers. This is a slide that I created just to take some of the highlights, just to put it in context. So if you're talking to your business partners or other people in your company, maybe this can give you a starting point. I'm not saying this is the exhaustive list. There's definitely other stuff that you need to know, but I'm just trying to point out that some of the stuff that can lead you or give you an idea that what are the things that you should study before you really present your plan to in your company to other people, or if you're a consultant to your customers. One thing I see still, especially the new folks in working with the data platform, they get confused when I tell them that when you go to Azure SQL database, you cannot say that I want to have a SQL Server, or can I have a database in SQL Server 2022 or SQL Server 2019? That concept doesn't exist. It totally goes away. So how do you control the behavior? You can only control it by compatibility level. So make sure you understand this. Even on premises now, compatibility level is becoming more and more kind of, if you're doing upgrade, you can go to a major version without upgrading your compatibility level, and then you can run it with a lower compatibility level and see if, then you can change it. So with Azure SQL database, SQL Server managed instance, all this you can only control compatible level. So you want to make sure you understand what's compatible level, what is the impact of this, what is the impact of staying at a lower one than the default of whatever is the maximum right now in Azure is 160. I put some small numbers. I don't know what you call this subscript. I don't know the exact English word, but means you want to read this here, right? So if for backups and patching, there's something called SQL Server IaaS agent extension. So if you're running a SQL Server migrating to Azure VM, you definitely want to read about this extension. And then of course, how I've been talking about many things, right? And I'll show you a lot more tools to make you more confused. But all of this will depend on, what's your plan, right? How many servers you're going to move? What are the sizes? Do you have downtime? That's the bigger thing, especially if you're moving to Azure SQL database in the PaaS model. You definitely, if you have to do online migration, you definitely have some hurdle, especially if it's a bigger size. And we'll talk about that. Now I'm talking strictly about Azure SQL database in PaaS model, not the managed instance, not the SQL Server running on Azure VM. So you have an option that you can deploy as a single database, or you can deploy as Elastic pool. So what does that mean? A single database will have its dedicated resource for CPU memory IO. But if you have a bunch of non-production database, or say like you have business around the world, and people are not using it, all the people are not using it at the same time, and you have different databases, right? If you're say like a SaaS provider, or you have database for different region, then you can put these databases into a pool. Means they will share the CPU memory and the IO, and that way you can keep the cost under control, or you can keep the cost down. So definitely look at how Elastic Pool can save you there compared to a single database. And then on the compute, you have more options. You have vCore model, you have DTU, which is database transaction unit model, which is abstract of a couple of things together. So it's abstract of compute, memory, and IO resource. So you really don't see how much CPU you're getting, how much memory you're getting. They're all abstract and they give you a number. And you also have a serverless model. So again, I'm not going to go into details, but you definitely want to understand. So if you go into serverless model, I just copy pasted this from a URL from a Learn web page. It shows you that how you get billed, right? So if you have a server that either developers, or if you have a workload that maybe run few times a day, you can write Azure function, or you can do other stuff to scale it up, scale it down. But you can also do this, right? So if you have a serverless model, then you have a max and min. You're paying for the min, and then when you are paused for an hour, right now the minimum is an hour, then it sleeps, and then you don't pay anything. Microsoft promised, this is not an NDA. I think I heard it in one of the sessions that there's a lot of customers feedback to reduce this hour from 1 hour. So it might go down in future. You do not have to wait 1 hour to get to the 0 week, or for paying that. Otherwise, you'll be paying at least 1 hour for the minimum week. And then there are different tiers. So the basic, I'm not going to read this again, look it up. And then you definitely want to know, your end goal, right? Like, what kind of HA solution you're going to deploy, what kind of backups you have requirement. And, like I said, how much IO you need, how much memory, you first write all those, then go back and try to match, because sometimes what happens is some of the features are only available on certain hardware, and those hardwares are on certain service tier. And then I also showed you there are some limits of the database size, individual file size limit, and all that, right? So if you write down your requirements, then you walk back and decide, which tier I want to deploy. Don't do it on the other way, then you might have to redo the whole thing. This is a slide, it might seem out of order, or out of, like, why this suddenly I'm talking about this, as I was talking about options. I couldn't find a better place. So this is a two terms that you will probably be hearing over and over if you are working on migration. And yeah, so I couldn't find a better place to put this, but you definitely want to know this. So DACPAC file, you have only your schema if you are scripting out your schema, and then you want to deploy it, or you want to import it in an empty Azure SQL database. And then if you want to do it with Backpack, it's a schema and data. Of course, if you're talking about like terabytes of database size, you probably don't want to create a Backpack for your schema and data and try to import it. Probably not a good idea. You probably want to explore other solutions that we'll be talking about. I put this here. I'm not going. We talked about this before, but there is another URL I find in the Learn website that can be very beneficial to just reading about transaction log rate governance. So let's talk about some features, right? So today, if you are migrating from on-premises to Azure, right, you might have all this on-premises, right? So you probably want to think about a little bit more on each one, right? What do I do? Because if you're going to Azure SQL database in PaaS, you do not have integration service, you do not have SSRS. There are some built-in high availability, but you can also build on top of that. So you want to know what's available. Logins and groups, the best suggestion I can give is to think a little bit differently. We are always used to, logins, users, they're mapped. So try to come out of that concept if you're working with PaaS model. You probably want to contain everything within the database. So if you are failing over to a different region, you don't have to worry about logins. Was the logins were created or not, right? You don't have to worry about those. SQL agent jobs, big deal, right? Because there is no SQL Server agent there. What do I do? I have a whole hour talk. Where is my SQL Server agent, right? There are a bunch of tools that you can use. to mimic what SQL Server Agent Jobs does. You will not see model or MSDB. You even don't see actually TempDB, even though you can query some of the TempDB stuff. You only see master in Azure SQL Database. So think about all this. At the same time, as I said, there are new features in Azure. So you also want to take advantage of this that we didn't had in on-premises, right? Especially with the security news that we see every day, right? Someone is getting hacked, someone's data is, in the dark web and all that. There are a bunch of, cool tools that are built in, especially Defender for Azure SQL. It's an awesome tool that you can do, nice, nice stuff. Ledger is one, auditing. So yeah, overall, take a look. For monitoring, there are, diagnostic settings, metrics that get collected. You can set up log analytics workspace, and there are a bunch of other things. So there's definitely more options when you go there and you want to know about this, so you can take advantage. So finally, we are into the migration, right? So we talked about all this. So, and I'm going to run through this quickly. These are some of the tools. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but you'll see some tools name are on both sides, right? Azure Migrate on the left and on the right. DMA, we are used to Database Migration Assistant, very old tool. There are newer versions. You see it on both sides because you can do assessment, but you can also use it for migration. So I'll show some of these, but I'm not going to, go into details. The first page that I showed you actually will refer to most of these tools that I ask you to bookmark. This is also a copy, not exactly. I took the idea from there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is the URL that you will see something similar that compare all these tools, right? Because we don't have time right now in an hour to go through, use all the tools, compare, contrast, and make a slide like this, right? That'll probably take about 3 hours. So if you are not sure, because some of this stuff you can do with different tools, right? Based on how many servers, how many database, and all that. So, this summary can help you, and this will take you to that where it talks more about comparison of the tools. Now, I've been doing this for about 6 to 7 years now. Migrating a lot of things to different destinations. Without going into details, one thing I find challenging is the data. Even today, there is no tool built in that you can just go and click, or write 1 or 2 line of PowerShell that will do online migration if you're going to Azure SQL Database. There have been huge improvement if you are migrating to managed instance or SQL Server and Azure VM. I'll actually show you today how to do online migration. So the size of the database really doesn't matter. Your downtime is minimum. You can cut over at the end, like, I'm sure if you're working in this industry, you have done migration with log shipping. You start the log shipping probably 1 or 2 days ago, and then when the downtime starts, you shut down your app servers, no connection coming, you restore your last transaction log, right? And then you cut over, right? Very quick. We have the similar feature right now, or we can do exactly the same for two, but not for Azure SQL Database. So I still find like, moving the data, if you're migrating to Azure SQL Database, is still a challenge for us. So I'm not again going to go into details. These are some of the tools that can help you. So you definitely want to take a look at some of these and see if this can help you. And Microsoft also provides something called Azure Data Box. Again, I'm not going to go into details. Read about it. There is this is a URL. Will take you there. So it literally you can ship your data from on-premises to Microsoft, and they will plug it in. And you have to set up some service and stuff. And on the Learn website, you can read more details. So you can do that. And there are also there is also an agent that it's called like a data box gateway that you can set up that will continuously migrate your data from on-premises to Azure SQL. So there are a couple of options that I wanted you to be aware. So that's pretty much done talking. 25 minutes. So I have still 35 minutes. I'm going to use all of this if we have time. All these tools to show you. And I also have some reference if you want to read more about some of this stuff. And so I'm going to stop No, I don't want to stop sharing. I want to bring my tools up. So we'll go into demo right now. Any question? I know I went a little bit faster because my goal was to spend more time here. Okay, if not, I'm going to keep going. Should get a little bit bigger. Let me know if it's too small, too big. So the tool that you see right now on my screen is called Azure Data Studio. This is a multi-platform tool written by Microsoft. This is very lightweight tool, but you can use something called extensions. So the tool natively doesn't do much, but you can do a lot of things by enabling and disabling extensions. So I can show you here. I will be using some of this today. Database Migration Assistant for Oracle, Azure SQL Migration. This is one of the extensions. There are many extensions that you can enable, and once you're done, you can disable to keep the tool light. There's something also called notebooks. I know Warwick have a bunch of materials about notebooks. I know that for sure. So if you're not familiar, look up. I'm not going to talk about more details. There are a bunch of kernels that you can write notebooks in. And the advantage of this is you can have your comments, you can have your code, you can save the results, you can send it to someone, you can save it for yourself, you can clear it, you can run it again, you can do a bunch of things with this. So I'm using a PowerShell notebook. I ran all of this before all of you came online, so I'm not going to run this again because it takes a lot of time. I did a lot of setup, but if you're running my this once you download, if you don't like the names, you pretty much have to change these names and put your subscription ID here and your tenant ID. If you do not have multiple tenants, don't worry about it. And that's pretty much. Other than that, all the code should underneath everything should work as is. You do not have to make any changes, right? So I ran all this. I also want to show you something. So before you run this, please read through these prerequisites because I have a bunch of things here. If you want to do all the demos that I prepared, of course, you don't have time. You will need pretty much all of this. And some of this stuff I could have just done through PowerShell, just this one place, instead of using so many tools, but I really wanted to expose you to as many tools as possible. That way, you know all the options, or more options. We wouldn't be able to cover all the options. So I ran up to here, right? So the demo starts here. So let me just show you in the portal. What did I do? What did I deploy, right? So this is a resource group. Resource group is a logical container. The advantage is right after I'm done with this presentation, I can just delete my resource group and it is going to delete everything that I have here. So I have deployed a Azure SQL Server and then bunch of databases. Most of these are empty, we'll use. I also have a virtual machine that we'll migrate to. And I do have a migrate project, which I'll show you. And I also should have. Okay, yes, sorry, I have a migration service which you'll use, and I'll show you a bunch of these. I also have a storage account that I am using to take backups. You do not need to have a storage account for my demo. You can also have a file share. I just prefer to use it just to show you. So you have options there, and these are all in my comments. So Probably you can type this in the chat. Let me minimize this. So out of all this, if you have any preference, I can show you all this. I have prepared code. It even doesn't fit in this. So if you have any preference, anyone, what do you want to see? Put it in the chat. I'll run those first because we'll definitely run out of time. We cannot, do all this. So if any of you want to see anyone particularly from this list, put in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just pick and choose. Okay. Okay, since nobody's saying anything, I'm just going to start with. This maybe sounds very rudimentary or whatever you call, but if you are brand new, you haven't used that. You mean use a DACpack? We'll use DACpack, but what tool you want to see? Okay, so you want to see a DACpack. Okay. Yeah. So without doing anything, I mean, of course, you have to have set up in Azure, right? You have a blank server, and you can just come here, right-click, task, and you can say deploy my database to Microsoft Azure SQL database. This is the easiest way. But can you do this? Are you going to do this if you have, like terabytes in production or no? Probably no. But if you're just, testing or, you want to, you've never done this, probably this is a good way to do it. So this is my Azure SQL Server authentication. I'm connected. I can give the name to, I already, yeah, so I can just give, so just so you know, this is going from SSMS. One tip for all of you, when you're doing the migration, choose a larger SKU. That way your migration will be a lot quicker. And then once you're done, then you can scale it down, right? Because, if you don't need, you don't want to spend, all this. So I know, Ashok, you want a DACpack, but I'm just showing you similar concept. I could have just done this, and I'll probably do it in another demo. This one is going to create a backpack file behind the scene, right? And then we say next, finish, and that's it. I don't have to do anything. Very soon we'll see a database name here with AdventureWorks SSMS. And if we go to my C temp, we'll see a backpack file. And you can use that backpack file in probably 10 different ways. You can take it to a storage account, restore it there. You can go right here. I can import it from right here, and you can do it, all different ways. So we'll let this reap. We're not going to keep looking at this. It's going to take probably a couple of minutes. So we'll move, and then we'll come back and see when it's done, right? Any question, please put it in the chat. Okay, so Management Studio, we have done this. Database Migration Assistant. This is, like I said, this is an old tool. Even people use it for on-premises. If you're doing an upgrade or migration, you can always access even between the SQL Server major versions, right? See what features are going to work and what will not work. So you can do all this here. So let's try to do a migration from here. We can give it a name. I've been playing with this for last few days, so I don't know what demo number. So I'm just going to pick a higher number here. So our source is SQL Server. This one I can use for many things. As you can see, I can go to managed instance, I can go to virtual machine, I can go to Azure SQL Database, right? So I'm going to just pick Azure SQL Database. Again, is schema and data, and then I create. Yeah, I was testing it before, so I'm just going to. And now my target, SQL Server authentication. If you're doing it in your company, you probably want to, you'll probably go with your, Windows authentication. So Validation error. Okay. Oh, this is my source server. Okay, sorry. Okay. And again, let's just do AdventureWorks, just one in the interest of time. And now I need my destination. Right. And I can see that there are a bunch of databases already there. So I think I have created an empty one. This was done from my notebook. It will create one for you. There's code there. So I'm going to use this one. And the advantage here is what I showed you in SSMS. It actually gives you the whole schema. So you can take the schema, and if you see any issues that, during the assessment that some objects, have syntaxes that are not allowed, you can take those out and still deploy, right? And if you get an error, you will see it here and you can redeploy and you can do all that. So it's pretty much, I can take this and run it from SSMS, or I can just do it from here. So it's going to just deploy the schema right now, and then it will migrate the data, and I'll show you once it's done that. Okay, so that one is still working. So we have two going on right now. Okay. So Azure Database Migration Service. Let's look at this. So I can do pretty much, if you are doing it in a large scale, you probably are not going to use DMA or SSMS, right? Those are probably for testing, which is okay. If you're doing any large migration, you probably write some code to use this database migration service. So we can start a migration from here and monitor from here. I will show you from Azure Data Studio, but it's the same experience. So I'm connected to my local SQL Server instance. And you see this Azure SQL migration. You will only see this if you have the right extension enabled. If you do not have the extension enabled, even if you come here, you wouldn't see this, right? And you have to have a migration service running with the integration runtime. If you do not have one, it will give you a warning, and then it will tell you how to do that. And there also on the Learn website, there's enough documentation talks about this. So we'll say migrate to Azure SQL. We start a new session. Let's choose just one for the interest of time. Now, even on the DMA, I forgot to mention that. Even here, if you have a workload that you took a trace, external event trace, you can actually upload here, and it will also analyze that application workload to make sure that it's compatible with your target. So you can do that. The other thing you can do, oftentimes people ask me, like, how do I know that what size of Azure SQL database or a VM in Azure or a managed instance that I need, right? And I cannot show you this because it takes, you have to get through your full cycle, right? So like if you have certain workload only run once a week, then you should really run this for the whole week. So if you do this start data collection, it actually keep looking at your current usage, and at the end it gives you a recommendation of what size of any of these three that you should be migrating to. So you can start it from here. And then you can adjust some of the parameters also from here. I'm not going to get there right now. So this time, let's, we'll be using the SQL Server on Azure VM because I've shown you twice the chart, to the Azure SQL database in the past model. So let's migrate to a VM. That's interesting. No. We didn't do that. I was testing this couple of hours ago. Oh, I just had to go back and come back. It's found now. Oh. Okay, so here we'll do online migration. What does that mean? It means that it will restore our full backup. It will keep restoring the transaction log backups. And then when it is done with all the transaction log backups, it will give us a message that is ready to cut over. At that point, we can take another final log backup, or we can say we are done. There is no more transactions that hasn't been backed up. So just cut over, right? And I'm saying that my backups are in Azure Storage Blob container, right? And I'll show you that. So let me show that. So what do you want to do if you want to use, do this online migration, what I'm showing you right now? You want to set up your SQL Server backups using URL, and there are Microsoft documentation how to do this. To keep taking your backups right here. Right? So I have a full backup, I have a transaction log backup. So the transaction log backups will keep coming here, and the migration service will keep restoring. And when you want to cut over, you shut down your application, take your last T-log backup, and then it will tell you that there's no more T-log and are you ready to cut over. And if you do not want to do this, you can also have a network share. You can do that, but we're going to use this. It finds my container automatically, which is nice. And it is, I'm not sure if I gave it, so let's give the target database. Yeah, let's give it a name. I don't know, like say ADS, Azure Data Studio, right? So we know, and it's going to the VM. So it will start the migration. And if we go to the portal right now, and if we go to the migration service, we will be able to see it from here. These I tested before, so this is going on right now, right? And very soon we should we will see a database in the VM called AdventureWorks ADS. But that database is not there yet. That database will not recover by itself because we are doing a online migration unless we tell it to recover, right? Means we can keep restoring the transaction logs. So let's go and see the ones that we started before, what happened. So this one is done. And we can close, as you can see here, right? AdventureWorks SSMS. It has all the tables and data that the AdventureWorks on premises have, right? So that one is done. We were doing another one through this. So the schema is done. We can go to migrate data. I'm not going to do all, just for the interest of, you can select all or just do 3 tables. And that's pretty much, right? So, this one you can use also for assessment. It gives you a pretty good report, right? Tells you what features are not compatible. If you have a blocker and all that, it gives you all that. Okay, so we still have 15 minutes. Okay, so I've shown you the extension, right? Azure SQL migration. I'm showing the online one. I'm not going to show you the offline, but you can also do offline means, just use a one backup and, get it over, right? SQL package is a nice tool. Let's look at that. So SQL package is a command line tool. If you're not familiar, look it up. It comes with a few products that when you install, it comes with that, or you can also download it separately. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Doesn't exist. And I am with SQL package, I can also create backpack file. Right? So I'm going to create one. And once you have this backpack file in here, I can copy this backpack file to my storage account. I can import it there. I can restore it from there. I can also use SQL package.exe to directly restore from my local drive, right? You can do that. So SQL package.exe can generate backpack files, and it can also help you to import it as a to Azure SQL database. You can do that. Okay, so done that. Here I'm using SQL package exe import, and I'm doing it to my Azure SQL server, and I gave it a database name, and it is going to restore it. So you should see a database backpack _2 database here once it is done. Right now you don't see that. I have a backpack 1. You'll see a backpack 2. Let's see where we are here. Refresh. So now you see it says ready for cutover. And now if we go here in the VM, it's restoring, right? So unless I tell this to that go and cut over, it will stay like this. And now if I take another log backup, it will find that one. It will actually change the status and restore it again. And let's see what we see in the Azure right here. right? Here also you see it says ready for cutover, right? So let's go to the portal. Let's do the cutover. And if I say complete cutover, it gives me a warning that to make sure there's no additional log backups to provide and want to complete cutover. So this is, we only do this during the downtime. So your downtime becomes very short, right? Doesn't matter how big this database is, right? How many terabytes, you just have to calculate and start your restores beforehand. So in few seconds, you will see that it will recover and then the database will go back to, read write mode. Okay, so this one is working. I think the other thing I want to show you is the last one with the Visual Studio project. I like this one because if you have a complex schema, thousands of objects, and you are not sure what is compatible and what is not, if there are syntaxes that are not compatible, it's very easy to find out with doing a build from here. And the other good part, you can always remove objects and then do a build and then deploy. And then you can also add other objects, right? So your on-premises doesn't have to match your destination, right? If you want to fork and move, make some edits on certain objects, you can do it through this. So I'm going to create a new project. Any question? We are coming to the end. So if you have any question or comments, you can type and we can talk about some of those.
So I've just got a question for you around where you took everyone through looking at the database migration extension in Azure Data Studio, as well as the database migration service, and both use the self-hosted integration runtime that you did
Yes.
bring up and mention. Have they made a change? So with the extension in Azure Data Studio, it used to be while you could create a self-hosted integration runtime from within the portal, you couldn't use that for the migration in Azure Data Studio. The self-hosted integration runtime had to have been created through ADS. Has that changed, or is it still that you have to have created it through ADS for ADS to identify and use that?
Yeah, so what I am, I have an email to someone because right now, it's a good question. So if I show you this, the problem is what I cannot find out, even though it's a configuration manager, I cannot change the keys. So what you said is right. So if I delete my migration service today, there is no way if I create a new one to to integrate this runtime with my new migration service. I cannot. So every time I have to delete this, and then I have to use the key from the ADS, and then reinstall this. So that's the problem. I wish it, the name is configuration manager. I wish I could just open somewhere and put the new key and couple it, but I cannot.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, you still have to do it from ADS.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure with what you'd shown. So with creating the runtime in ADS, that allows you to do it in ADS, but from the portal, it can use that same integration runtime.
Oh, from portal, yes, it can. It can,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so whatever I did here, right? I think, oh, sorry. I think now I see what you're saying. So whatever I did from here, I can literally, it will use that because now these two are linked. So if I come here and I do a migration here from here, I can do exact same thing what I did, right? From the ADS, right? I can do this.
Yeah.
And
so
we can do it, and it will use that runtime.
Yeah. And so, yeah, because when it first came out, it was if you created that runtime from here in the portal, and then you tried to use it in ADS, ADS would not see it. And so you had to create it. And so I just wanted to make sure that people are aware, depending on which process or tool you're going to use, there might be some slight differences, and you might be looking at it going, but I've got this thing called integration runtime, but it can't find it. Okay, so just be mindful of that.
And what I really, even today, my complaint is, SAG, get rid of this, right? This migration service. But my runtime is still running. I should be able to, if I create a new one, I should be able to get the key and change it there, and they should couple together. It doesn't do it. So I do not know. Hopefully, one day it will get fixed anyway. Okay, so if we go, sorry, so as you can see, this database recovered. And if we go here, we do a refresh. There's nothing pending, right? So it's all done. So this is the online migration, and you can do the same for managed instance too, which is pretty good. Right now, you cannot only do it for Azure SQL database for the PaaS model, online migration. Okay, so it's done. I think I made a mistake that I copied this. I think this might give me grief, so I'm going to, oh no, dear. Delete. I meant to do a option to not get my logins and okay. So now I can do a build. Okay, what happened now? That's interesting. Okay, I deleted something that I should not. Okay, anyway, so I'm not going to try to troubleshoot this. I think I deleted some of the schemas, which I should not have. So once you do this, once you do the build, and then if you get an error, I mean, not like me, for everything is error, one or two objects, you should be able to come here and delete or modify those objects. And when you have a clean build, and then you can do a deploy against Azure SQL database from here. This will only do schema. This will not do your data, right? So again, there are many ways to do data. When you do this, there is a catch that I put a note here. If you do not do this, you will keep getting error messages because of the way it looks at the internal versions of the database. It says that you are not at the, not at a compatible version. So it will keep giving you this error message. So when you publish, allow incompatible platform, it's just the internal version number. It says that you cannot deploy there. This is still an issue. And that's pretty much. So I will show you my contacts again. And then I know it's 35, it's an hour. So I'll take questions if anybody has one or any comments, and I will upload this in my GitHub repo, not tomorrow because I'll be in the office. I rarely have any access to any of my personal things from my office. It's a financial institution. Probably on Wednesday or Thursday, I'll send email to Warwick, and then you can all download this. And then, if you want to play around, feel free and let me know.
All right. Well, thank you, Tao, for your time in taking us through a number of ways to be able to migrate to on-premises to Azure. As Tao did mention, if you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and you can come off of mute as we call you out, or put them in the chat window, and I'll be able to ask those to Tao. While we've got those last couple of minutes, just to remind everybody, we have recorded this session, and once it is finished, I'll have to do a little bit of work on it, and then we'll be able to get that up onto the Data Platform Downunder YouTube channel. I have placed the link to that in the chat window. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, feel free to go to that. You'll see all of the sessions that we've been hosting over the last three and a bit years that we've been up and running. So there's lots of content there for you to be able to continue your learning on the data platform. So Odvar, we had drawbacks of simply using backup and restore. So I guess before I'll hand that to Tao to do, but can you qualify, because you can't just do a restore to all locations in Azure. So while we just wait for Odvar to come back, Tao, you can add some details, and then we've got another one for you.
Yeah, your question is valid. Like, you need to know your destination, like Warwick said. If you are going to Azure SQL database in PaaS model, or even in hyperscale, and in managed instance, I don't work that much, but I know they're, I don't know if you can
you can do a restore to managed instance. So it's like
you can bring it back. I think
it's the closest thing to an on-premises instance of SQL Server without being an IaaS instance. And so Odvar, if you're going to a PaaS instance like Azure SQL Database, then the migration extension in Azure Data Studio is really, really good for you, because you're able to do your workload comparisons, and it interrogates, and it will give you some recommendations around the size of Azure SQL Database you need, but it would also do that for your Azure VM as well. Okay, and so it's not able to just do that backup and restore. You can only do that for your VM or to managed instance.
Yeah, the closest thing will be a backpack file. But again, I said, if you have a large, like a terabyte size, you probably don't want to go to that route to create a backpack file from there. I think you'll regret it. So the schema is pretty easy. There are many ways, like I showed you, but the data, if you're going to Azure SQL Database, you definitely want to think about a little bit more how you want to do it, right? There are many different ways, and keep the downtime to a minimum. So.
Any other questions? And Advar, does that answer your question? So just while we let him, okay, it would be to a VM. Okay. So I guess, Advar, the beauty of with what you're doing, a VM in Azure is exactly the same from a SQL point of view as if it was in AWS, GCP, or on-premises, whether you're going to a Hyper-V environment, ESX, or even if you were just going to a physical server. So just think about that as it's the same thing because basically it's infrastructure as code. Any other questions for Tayob from anybody?
I'll just make a comment that, I know, like backup restore is going to work, but, there are many of you work in industries that a downtime will be a big, constraint, and the size, right? So some of the tools like this migration extension, especially enabling the online is really awesome. Like, I love it. You can also set up log shipping. If you say, I don't want any of this, I want to go like, old style, right? You can set up log shipping a couple of days ago and then, cut over with a minimum downtime. But, if you have enough downtime, you can take over a weekend. There are businesses, they don't do anything on the weekend. Absolutely, backup restore is one of the easiest way to do it.
Now, just as a little point, Tayob did bring it up with the migration extension, okay, that for you to get the recommendation on whether it's what size Azure SQL Azure database or VM, etc., you do have to collect some workload. Now, Tayob did go through and say what you need to do. Just be wary that you can get that first initial one. When you kick it off, you can get that first initial recommendation. I believe it's still only after 15 minutes of it collecting data. The likelihood is 15 minutes of data is not going to give you enough information for you to make that decision around whether what size VM you need or what size Azure SQL database. So like everything, you need to understand your environment, your workload to know, well, okay, we're in January and I'm going to collect this. But if we have a massive workload at the end of the year, say for Black Friday sales, right? Your workload is going to be much bigger and you might not capture that. Okay, so you may have performance issues down the track based on those recommendations. Okay, they can only be made based on what you've allowed it to collect. Any other questions from anybody? Or comments? It was a fantastic session, lots of information, and we'll look at, if you are wanting the details, feel free to reach out to me, and once I've got those from Tayob, I can let you know. So with that, as I mentioned, we do have 2 sessions next month. So the next one will be in 2 weeks' time, where we will be talking about minimizing downtime during deployment. So it actually goes quite well following on from with what Tayob has taken us through today. It'll introduce you to some other concepts, but we're still staying inside of that same process. Then to round out February, we've got From Zero to Hero on Microsoft Fabric Spark Compute. So something new for everybody to learn about. So get your knitting needles out and we'll learn how to stitch something together. Oh, sorry, wrong forum, but Fabric is the new, I guess, sparkle word that is going around that everybody's so excited about. So if you want to learn more about Fabric, feel free to register for that, and we'll see you in a month's time. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mike. So, just so everybody knows, Mike will be doing a shortcut keys session to introduce him to the wonderful world of presenting and to share his knowledge around shortcut keys. Thank you, Mike. There we go. All right, well, we'll let everybody get on with your day. Thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next couple of sessions. Thank you, Tayob, for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.